I actually switched from Chrome to Opera GX.
Opera GX.
Opera GX.
Opera GX.
Opera GX.
Opera GX, the amazing browser that took over the internet with its amazing features like a built-in VPN, an ad blocker, and one of the fan favorites, which is you being able to control your CPU and RAM while browsing on the extension. And this sounds amazing, but too good to be true, because Opera would later get exposed for harassing their customers for money, stealing data, and having sneaky experiments that would leave users at a security risk. But before we hop into Opera GX, we will have to hop into Opera before the GX. Get what I did? I think that was trash. The first version of Opera's web browser was released in 1995, and even in its prime, it was still a niche browser. Unlike the dominant browsers of the 1990s like Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator, Opera was a paid-for software with a limited time trial. And what made Opera stand out was that it worked on more than just a desktop browser. Opera Mini was one of the best mobile browsers in the 2000s, allowing flip phone users to access much more of the internet just from their cell phones. At this time, business was booming for Opera, but this would shortly come to an end when Google dropped Google Chrome in 2008. It immediately took off and started to take up the user market space. And this is where you could say it got ugly for Opera. Hindenburg Research released a detailed report on Opera in 2020, outlining Opera's alleged fraud and illegal activities. For the ones who don't know what Hindenburg is, they're a company that starts their investigation on brands, targeting their public records and documents, and in some cases, they even interview employees. So to sum it up, they're basically the FBI, but just for businesses. Hindenburg alleged that when Opera started to lose users from the competition like Google Chrome and Apple, the company shifted gears into building mobile apps that provided predatory short-term loans. Opera also falsely advertised longer loan terms and lower interest rates in the app's description because the Google Play Store had rules against predatory loan services. The loan app specifically targeted customers in Kenya, India, and in Nigeria. Hindenburg also confirmed through users that two of the apps, Okash and Opesa, asked for permission to the phone contacts during the setup process. So they basically already forcefully snatched your number off rip. This service would then start sending users threatening messages if they failed to pay their payments. Basically, it started to seem like you're getting targeted by the dark web than just setting up a loan. And at this point, Opera has officially lost it. Targeting developing countries just to get money is crazy. I'm not gonna lie, this is on the next level of robbery. But Opera will quickly try to cover their tracks, coming out with a response saying that the report contains numerous errors, misleading conclusions, and interpretations regarding the business and events relating to the company. So they try to cover this up real quick, but they didn't say anything about what was wrong at all. Everything that Hindenburg put out, they didn't actually try to specifically correct and adjust. It's just like they're saying, nah, bro, we ain't doing none of that. What you talking about? You just chatting, but they didn't hit you with no facts. And you're probably wondering, like, why are they trying to steal money from their users? It kind of makes sense because they have been losing users since 2018. So at this point, they're getting desperate. So what can they do to try and reel people back in? Let's really sit down and think for a second. Okay, I got it. Let's make another browser, but this time cater toward gamers. Oh my gosh, and then we name it Opera GX. And then Opera would introduce Opera GX in 2019.
What were the reactions when we first launched Opera GX?
The looks is just one thing. People really appreciate two features that we have included. That's the Twitch integration, so you can see who you're following, who's online right now. The GX control is another thing that people really appreciate. Some even say this is the one and single reason why they really switch from another browser, and they're ditching what they have already been using for Opera GX.
Opera GX!
Ain't nobody getting this excited for a browser. They need to hire a new actor. And they would spend a boatload of money on advertisements collaborating with 5,300 influencers. I wonder where they got all that money from. How did they pull this out? How are they paying everyone? And there seems to be no problem with Opera GX at first. Don't get it wrong, everyone is loving the browser with strong engagement from users, and they're also engaging with it in different ways, like using it on Discord servers, through its meme page on Twitter, and Opera itself is staying very active, bringing themselves up at gaming inventions and trying to stay connected with the communities. And this surprisingly worked. It seems like Opera is in the green. Everyone has forgotten about their past. This made them gain 20 million active users, but soon people will start to become skeptical of Opera and its features, with YouTuber Linus Tech Tips saying that most of the fan favorite features are sucky. He also stated how Opera having a built-in VPN is great, but it should not be trusted because of Opera's recent past. It's like, finally someone's thinking. Like, if you really do some deep dive research into Opera's rabbit hole, you're not gonna trust these niggas. They are weird. Stealing money from developing countries is weird. And his assumption wasn't wrong at all, because another YouTuber named Cubic dived into their VPN and he kind of broke down and explained how their system works.
GX has a built-in VPN. Well, there may be some problems with your privacy and security when it comes to using this VPN. A VPN works by routing a device's internet connection through a private service rather than the user's regular internet service provider. This, in theory, would change the user's IP and make their browsing experience more secure. However, how most VPNs run is they reroute your location to a random place and also encrypt the data to ensure the user's confidentiality when surfing the internet. However, Opera GX reroutes your location directly to the Norwegian headquarters, which there they would have access to all your personal information. It is not known whether they encrypt your data or not. That is all up to you, but this VPN can give them access to personal information such as browser history, a direct insight on your IP address, and even more.
And in my opinion, I do not think it's worth giving Opera all this data. Yes, other browsers and services do the same thing. They do take your data. But one, Opera is claiming that they're the most best protected browser there is. Not saying that other browsers don't do that. They do, but Opera's trying to act like they're Kawhi Leonard. Like, come on, bro. Relax. You're more like, how could I say, James Harden, 2000 and I don't know what year, but before he got traded. You know what I'm talking about. And really think about it. Why would Opera need all this data from us? And that only goes back to one reason. They're clearly selling it. If something is free, you are clearly the product. And I did come up with that quote myself. Type shit, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, shit, I'll be doing that on the weekends and shit. And other YouTubers started to try out the GPU feature, saying that it also wasn't that impressive.
One of the features that Opera tries to sell you in their Opera GX browser is a CPU and RAM limiter. So I installed it on my Windows laptop to test it out, and it didn't work. No surprises. So I decided to install it on my Mac. Now, if you've ever used macOS before, then you'll know how locked down of an operating system it is. So I'm very skeptical that it will allow some random app to change important system settings to limit CPU and RAM usage. And yeah, it didn't work. In fact, with no tabs open, Brave browser actually ended up using 60 less megabytes of RAM on my Mac.
And in a desperate need to regain attention, Opera decided to come out with a VTuber named GX Aura. And they started a live stream on Twitch that surprisingly gained 75,000 viewers. But really think about it. Are people really tuning into a random VTuber like that? If you're not Iron Mouse, you're not valid. The way they got all these views is because Opera embedded their stream in the GX Corner feature. So basically anyone who logged on and started to browse through instantly counted as a viewer, and they weren't even watching. So this was like a forced attempt for Opera to get more attention, with their fan base not really dropping, but kind of slowly dwindling down. And it's 2025. If you want to use Opera GX, hey, go ahead. You could do whatever you want to do, but it's just kind of good to be aware of their past and what they have done and what they have done now with Opera GX. Like, do you really think they wouldn't do something else this drastic, like forcing you to pay for something? And there's other browsers out there that literally are like Opera or even better, like Firefox, Safari, Brave. Like, there's a whole list. So I don't really think there's a need to use Opera GX. If you like the VPN, I guess you can't just buy a VPN and that works way better. Like, Opera's VPN is literally a scam. But this is all up to you. I'm just bringing the attention to this. So I hope Opera doesn't do anything crazy in the future. I wouldn't have to make another video on them.